I see it on the Noodle Factory YouTube channel. Let me check my personal one. Live. Great, it works. I'll log out now.
Okay, we're just a few minutes from getting started on our live stream. Let people get connected. Amy, good morning to you. Still morning, not afternoon yet.
Yep. Good morning.
And welcome if you're just joining us. So we will start right at the top of the hour. So that will be noon Singapore time. You have just enough time to top up your tea, coffee, or water, or maybe get your lunch if you're joining us around lunchtime. But we'll get started in just a couple of minutes. Hi, everybody. If you're just joining us, we're about a minute away from getting started. We'll start right at the top of the hour. Thank you for joining us today for this really important topic on onboarding and a different way to approach onboarding. And we're so excited to talk to Amy Tan today. We're about a minute away from getting started. All right, if you're just joining us, we're right up at the top of the hour. We're getting started in about 20 seconds or so. Just waiting for a few more people to join the live stream, and we'll get kicked off here very, very shortly. Okay, well, by my watch, it is top of the hour, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Today is a fairly short and straightforward live stream about a really complex topic, a very important topic, onboarding. This is something that I think if you're joining, you probably have a direct and meaningful concern about this. As a manager, I certainly think about this a lot. As someone who works with clients in their onboarding efforts, I think about this a lot. It's make or break, as you know. And one of the things that we're going to do is we have the privilege today of talking to Amy Tan, who's a course coordinator, a manager, and a lecturer from Temasek Polytechnic here in Singapore. We'll get her to introduce herself in a moment, but just to talk about where we aim to cover today, or what we aim to cover and where we aim to go, we're going to talk a little bit today about why traditional onboarding often fails, some of the pitfalls around traditional approaches to onboarding, but how engagement right from day one in the onboarding process can create stickiness and loyalty. And really that is the point where in this make or break moment, that employee can have a great experience or can struggle. And then we'll walk through something that you probably came here to see, which is a live demo, or a demo. It's a recorded demo, but a demo of an AI assisted onboarding approach. And then we'll have some time just to discuss thoughts and maybe even questions from you. We'll be taking questions around the top things that you are thinking about and maybe are concerned about as you consider where and how to use AI in onboarding. So before we go down that rabbit hole, let's take a minute and we'll introduce ourselves. First of all, let me quickly introduce myself in case we have not had a chance to engage with each other on different live streams or webinars. My name is Jim Wagstaff, and I'm one of the founders of Noodle Factory, which is an AI-powered learning assistant, and it is used in many onboarding efforts. I'm located in Singapore, And I'd like to ask Amy Tan, who is with us as a special guest, to introduce herself and to talk a little bit about your practice and your experience, Amy.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Tan. I'm a course coordinator with Diploma in Business at Temasek Polytechnic. In addition, our diploma also runs 2 part-time business diplomas for adult learners. So I'm really passionate about how we can make onboarding, and I like the way you say it, Jim, stickiness, whether it's for students or professionals, feel more personal and engaging. I'm really looking forward to share my experience with you today.
Yeah, I love that because this is a broad topic, isn't it? We're focusing on professionals, but student onboarding is incredibly important
Mm.
as well, and that's probably a topic for an entirely separate live stream or webinar. But we might get into some of that today. Some of the things that, in thinking about this topic, and we had a chance to talk with Amy in advance, is sometimes onboarding can feel very transactional for new
Mhm.
employees, even for managers. It's sort of checklist driven. We've got certain things we need to cover. There's often compliance related things that are a part of onboarding. There's training that's role specific. There are job aids that are a part of onboarding. And there's a need to do this quickly so that you can get that employee up and operational and delivering value to the business. Often this is in hybrid teams, so it's not role specific. This depends on the size of the business, obviously. And expectations for that employee are pretty high coming out of onboarding. It's pretty easy in that process for employees to feel very lost or disconnected early on. I guess, Amy, that's a lot to lay out on the table to begin with, but how would you react to some of those thoughts and some of those pressures that everyone feels as a part of the onboarding process?
Maybe I like to, bring it back to our part-time diploma when I actually use Noodle Factory AI chatbot. For a new student coming adult learner, the first thing is they want to get engaged. So it all really boils down to engagement. They really need to feel connected. And just like how you can actually bring parallel a new hire that joins the company, they don't want to feel disconnected from day one. And if AI and onboarding can address that, that immediately gets them connected from day one. It becomes a dynamic process. You can scale up, you can do anything, you can, whether the employees working remotely or in the location, it won't become a mechanical experience for them.
Mm, right. If we zoom out just a little bit and we think about this across
Mhm.
industries, and I should say, Amy and I discovered in preparing for this that we actually have a not a direct connection, but we were
Yeah.
involved in the same project at a company, and you might want to talk about that. But we overlapped, and if we think about those real world experiences in industry and zoom out, what is your experience across maybe different industries or in different scenarios with onboarding and specifically around engagement and how engagement is so important from the get-go?
Yeah, so you will be surprised that when you think about engagement, right, you would think that it will be difficult at a big organization. I came from a former organization that is present in 200 countries and with about 100,000 employees just in that business unit. How to get them connected from even midway in their career and redo the engagement part is still about building that emotional connection. And actually, I was already 10th year in my job and I have to be trained as a foundation engagement trainer for that. I was skeptical at first, but they really trained me to get to the engagement first, connect with the employee first. And after that, we use that to speak to the new hires. And now with AI, everything will become even easier, scalable, and sort of become a companion buddy to the new hire that to feel engaged, especially in a huge organization where you're talking to people from all over the world, or you want to get to your work fast, you want to be able to lead and charge, but yet there are certain compliance standards to abide by. You need to know what is involved. So having AI buddy that and brings you through that journey, it becomes you won't be alone. You really become of that huge network. Yeah.
Yeah. So the project that you and I both worked on, that was almost 15 years ago now. And,
Yes.
obviously we weren't using AI then. That was very much
Yeah.
oriented towards face to face.
Correct.
Managers were a big part of that in making sure that they were there to coach. I guess if you fast forward to today and you think about, for you, when you're building your onboarding flow and you're
Mm.
thinking about using AI to augment onboarding, reflecting on those experiences, but also just what you're doing now, what is most important to you in building out that onboarding flow and how you make sure that that augments the personal touch and maybe face-to-face engagement in onboarding?
Yeah, talking about building the onboarding flow, I whether it is from student or professional training perspective, right? It's important to allow the experience to feel human and motivating and not a mechanical process. And it is much easier than I thought. Okay, I just did it last semester and I didn't really need technical skills. It's more about thinking through the learner's journey. So for my adult learner, also setting milestones for them, what they need to do, and letting the platform handle the delivery. And that
Mm,
was easy, really, because working adults are extremely busy, working adult learners, they want everything to be purposeful and efficient. So if
right.
engagement doesn't happen early in the process, you can't get quick wins and you will lose their attention immediately. So personalized touches, early success, you build the momentum in an onboarding process. Yeah.
What's the balance for you between the use of AI to assist onboarding versus more traditional means of onboarding? Do you have a sense of what that maybe a percentage or the workflows or tasks that you've outsourced essentially to AI for onboarding?
I still think we need to make it human by the personalized touches. And in terms of you can make it 80% AI, but 20% that you build in the personalized touches is important. So in TP, right, we use this format to support adult learners through leadership development. And the feedback has been pretty good. Um, Honestly, it's not so different from onboarding. So my adult learners use AI to coach them how to lead and succeed, especially they are running new teams. And if you bring it to onboarding, it's pretty, especially in large organization, it is still underdeveloped because we it cannot become onboarding cannot become an afterthought. It has to be something that engages the employee, and with a bit of right structure, a bit of AI, although I did say about 80%, it can become personable, scalable, and even more engaging. Whether the employee is working remotely or whether the employee is working in an office, it has the potential to create a strong corporate culture. And whatever the HR folks you put in terms of the values of your corporate culture, you can allow the new hire to get a common understanding of the company and the organization they work for. Yeah.
Hmm. So that brings up an interesting question because the culture, I've often heard this defined as it's the way we do things around here. That's
Hmm.
one definition of culture.
Yeah.
Did you think about that in terms of the way you set up your AI onboarding platform? Was there some branding around that or messaging and maybe even the persona? Did you go that far to think about that in terms of how the onboarding experience was?
Yeah, so in terms of leadership development for in for our adult learners, we think about the kind of leading skills that we want them to have, like let's say managing conflicts, managing groups, as well as visioning skills. So we sort of build that contextualize, make it contextualize for them, so that when they are asking the AI chatbot on certain areas of it, the scope is contextualized to whatever we're trying to veer them towards our leadership development. So you can actually customize that for your organization to in an onboarding process, what kind of the values you want them to have, how are decisions being made in this organization, how do you address innovation at work in the organization as well.
Hmm. And we're gonna take a look at an example of an onboarding agent, as we would call it. Now, we're going to use an onboarding agent that we use in Noodle Factory, but it's probably very similar to what you're doing. Before we do that, though, a couple of questions just came to mind as you were answering that previous question. One of the points of feedback that we've gotten from other clients, and I want to see if you're the same way, but we've noticed with other clients, they say that their new hires, their employees that are being onboarded or students that are being onboarded, they say that this sort of represents kind of a judgment-free zone, and that unlike working with, let's say, in a classroom environment or a big seminar environment, or even in e-learning, this is a way to have conversationally a way to ask the silly questions, I'll call it that way, where I might be a little bit embarrassed or unsure of myself in that new hire session or onboarding session. And so I don't ask the questions that are probably important, but that embarrassment gets in the way. It's a barrier to me really fully onboarding. Have you noticed that in your own work? Does that show up at all, or have you seen your learners, your new students? Have they said that this is an area where I feel a bit more free to ask those questions?
Yeah, that's where AI can really shine because you can actually ask them anything, 24/7. And of course, in the back end, when you contextualize the kind of responses, you can guide the adult learners back to what they need to know in terms of leading teams. So if you maintain a steady rhythm of check-ins, nudges, personalized guardians in a safe environment, they actually become engaged quite quickly, and they know that it's a non-judgmental area where they can ask maybe what you call silly questions that everyone seems to know and I do not know. So it creates a feeling of presence. Even when you're not in office, you want to ask a question just to guide you back. If you contextualize the the information you want, that it ties back to the corporate culture or the way of doing things or to the values in the organization.
Hmm. Yeah, when I said silly questions, I should have done the air quotes because those are the sorts of questions that you want, right? As a job aid, or it doesn't matter when I'm using the tool, whether it's on day one or further into my experience in the onboarding process. You want people to continue to ask those questions because it
Yes.
means they're open to learning in a way.
Yeah, and sometimes they can ask like, oh, where do I apply for leave? Or what kind of
Yeah.
leave, do they have? But you dare not ask another, especially if you're working remotely, maybe you can't reach another colleague, a colleague who is not there, or and then this really becomes an um, companion buddy. But one of the key things is when you build this AI onboarding, you have to anticipate what kind of questions the new hires will ask. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to give that material for the agent to work with. Otherwise, you run the risk of either getting bad answers, wrong answers, or no answers, which is maybe even worse.
Yes, and nowadays the AI is becoming more human. In the past, you're like, sorry, please go there. Okay, please get to this policy, everything. But when we infuse humanistic kind of answers into the AI managed onboarding, they actually pretty clever with a lot of machine learning. They're pretty clever in terms of answering, our guiding the new hire back to, hey, this is the zone that you should be in, and in a very nice and engaging manner.
Yeah, this is obviously one of the benefits, and for everyone who's here, you're self-selected in this live stream, so you probably know this, but that's obviously the benefit of generative AI is you get that more human-like engagement. And in a closed system, which is what Noodle Factory is, where you're essentially using only the content that is meant for that purpose. So in this case, onboarding, all of the content that you have provided to that system in a closed environment where effectively it's a walled garden. So if a student asks a crazy question like, what's your favorite recipe for this dish? Well, unless that's in the content, it's
Mm,
not going to return an answer.
yes.
But if it's within the content that you've provided, it's going to give a good, robust, synthesized answer. Now, Amy, let me ask you just a couple more questions before we look at
Mm,
the demo.
yeah.
Uh, Often when we say that, and when I say that to prospective clients who are interested in using generative AI in onboarding, they say, that sounds really hard. That sounds really difficult. I'm not particularly technical. Yes, I have a lot of content, And we try to explain to them that it's really about bringing the content to the system. How did you, just technically or from a process perspective, how did you find setting up your agent? Did it require a lot of technical capability? Was it really hard? What was your experience?
Yeah, I mean, when I first did it, that was last semester. I mean, I try to take from the point of what my adult learners would want, and surprisingly, it was much easier than I thought, because most of the heavy lifting is actually in the designing the right journey. What do you want your student to go through? And most of my adult learners in this program, and in that particular program, they actually work shift hours. So sometimes they are accessing the chatbot at wee hours of the morning, and because of when the shifts end, and sometimes they like to use it like a chit chat buddy. But we tied it back to really the kind of content and leadership that we want them to get used to. So the technology part, surprisingly, is so simple, and I actually had a lot of fun even designing how my chatbot would look like, and just become user friendly. Then after that, but we do have a bit of scaffolding with the adult learners to get them used to the chatbot, and also train them the kind of questions you should ask, and the purpose of that chatbot, and what its objective is to guide them, provide them guidance, motivational guidance, some of the responses they can use in leadership development. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Well, let me just stop here. And as we go into the demo, make sure if you've got any questions, go ahead and pop those into the question panel, the Q&A panel. We'll keep an eye out for that. And we'll have some time right after the demo to just go through some questions and Amy, benefit from your experience. So I'll share this demo. And as you heard, Amy's been using Noodle Factory for her leadership course at TP. And it's great to hear some of the examples that she shared about the structure and the approach with the onboarding. So I want to show you what this looks like in action. So this is actually the onboarding agent that we use at Noodle Factory. And now this is a recorded version of this. I'm just going to kick this off. I'm not a very good multitasker, so we wanted to just sort of let this play, and we're going to describe what's going on here. We have, in fact, a new learning success manager that's joined us this week. And so you can see here for that new learning success manager, they can come in and they can find a little bit out about the company and the platform, who we are, how we got started. And there's a guided flow to that. And Amy, I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on the structure of this. But you can also, in addition to just going through a guided tutorial, I can just ask questions. And so you can see here, we're asking, it's my first day, I'm nervous. And so our candidate here is named Yvonne, and there's a little bit of guidance for them. And now here's a knowledge check. Here's a little bit of a fun quiz asking, after they've gone through the tutorial, what are the sorts of things that Noodle Factory does? How do we emphasize areas in our relationship with clients? So we'll kind of move through this pretty quickly, but we've interspersed things like quizzes and knowledge checks. There's a little bit of gamification with this, with badges that new hires can earn. There are role plays, and we'll take a look at a role play in a moment. So you can see some of the questions here. So now we're getting into things like commercials. I'll fast forward this if it goes on too long. Should be getting to the end here. All right, so now we've got these open text answers. And this is something just from an operational perspective that's kind of interesting. Okay, now there's one. What's the name of our chief canine officer? We do have a chief canine officer. Okay, so you can see now that our learner, our new hire, our onboarding candidate gets immediate feedback, and they can see what were the correct answers. They can go back in, and if they missed one, they can re-engage with that and explore that. And now we get back into the open text questions. Oh, now this is a good one. Can you give me the elevator pitch for Noodle Factory? So our learning success managers are there to support clients, but they probably do want to know what's the value proposition for Noodle Factory. So because all of this is based on the things that are on our website, internal documents, SharePoint location. So we just sort of embedded all of that into this agent. Now here we've got this new hire that's said, can I switch to Mandarin? Maybe they're a bit more comfortable in Mandarin. All of the underlying content is in English, but hey, I want to use Mandarin. Maybe I just want to explore that, embed the learning, and then I'll switch back to English. So all of these things, you can see and you can imagine as a new hire, I'm getting a lot of different interaction and a lot of different touch points with the information that I need when I need it. Now, here's a role play that we've set up for learning success managers. So this is meant to be a client engagement scenario. So something that you could probably do with fellow new hires if you have enough people to do that. In this case, I can do this on my own terms. And I believe we've got sound on this.
Expression on their face. Thank you for joining me today. I understand you're here to present Noodle Factory's AI teaching assistant platform. Before we dive—
Yeah, so the new hire, I'll just turn that down because the new hire can use voice or keyboard in this case. So if they're doing a role play, it's probably more convenient, more real to use voice. And so this is meant to give that scenario where before a new learning consultant engages a client, they just have that chance to kind of role play that and to try different scenarios so that they're not so nervous when they get in front of a client. So I'll stop here. I'm just going to pause right here. And Amy, I'd like to get your thoughts on this so far because we're throwing a lot at everybody. But if you take a step back and you imagine outside of this specific example, the sorts of things that we all might need to give our new hires or people that are onboarding into our programs, what are your thoughts on this just in terms of the tools and the approaches that we've shown here and maybe some additional things that you're using that have been useful in your own onboarding?
So basically for my adult learners, right? I think you know it's it's very important to know what are your key engagement goals in the journey. All right. It's not just in onboarding, it's not just getting overloaded with all the information, but what is the critical information that is required by the newly hires. You address it in a very engaging manner. It becomes more palatable for the new hire to, yeah, I will try and get on board. And it's onboarding is really beyond orientation. It's really getting them on a journey, a specific period. It can be over 2 months or 3 months, but we personalize nudges. Hey, come try this, and Noodle Factory actually responds in a very human. I like the way they respond. As if I'm really, it's like my companion buddy. And so I see that in my adult learners, they actually overcome the inertia to type something and talk to the chatbot quickly. But from a HR perspective, you really got to know what are the key engagement goals that they have to get to, especially for the new hires in the entire journey. Yeah.
I love that. And a lot of times the clients that we work with say something similar beyond just the onboarding checklist, which is where that's a trap we all maybe have fallen into in the past. It's that notion that you need this information when you need it, which is often well beyond day one. It's when you're actually in the job and you go, what was that we talked about in the onboarding seminar or session? I really need that. And there's often not a quick and easy way, even through search, to try to find that information. And so this is a very engaging conversational way to make that happen.
Exactly. And I like to add that you got to start by making it personal, because each new hire is different from another hire. And you really got to address the emotional connection with them. Once you can get to the new hire in and pretty emotional manner, you sort of make them feel that they're part of something bigger and part of not just another headcount coming in just to do that work. The emotional connection at the start makes all the difference. So really the right journey is one thing, the key engagement goals is another. And of course, the entire design of that journey can really be thought through you can put it in 3 blocks or 3 key goals that you want them to address. Yeah.
That's excellent. So I'll share it I'll jump forward a little bit on this demo, and I wanted to share with you one of the things that we really like to provide in role plays. Let me see, I think we have some sound on this.
Mm.
Using keyboard now, but there's some feedback that is a part of, and I'm just going to jump forward a little bit on this. And so the role play ends here. And at the end of each role play, there's some feedback that's given. So this is great as a follow-up, a follow-through in the onboarding to allow people to come back and just practice. And to your point about, feeling personal, it's that persona that we develop around things like the role play and the engagement where this does start to feel like that learning buddy that we all wish was sitting right next to us. Well, in a virtual way, that is true. We've got this virtual AI learning buddy, onboarding buddy that's there for us 24/7, where we can go back and revisit some of these approaches or challenges that we might be feeling in the moment. So let me just double check and see what questions we might have coming through from you. And Amy, I'll maybe kick things off with a question, and it builds on something that you just mentioned around personalization. Have you gotten any feedback, or do you have any intuition about how people feel about this, just in terms of does it feel less personal, or what are your learners saying about the sort of engagement that they get with an AI versus a human? What's the comparison there?
Um, of course, when you put a chatbot to my adult learners, the first reaction is like, "Oh no, is it not another robot that to talk to me? It doesn't feel like a real person." But because we built in the demo as well, and we start to teach them to prompt certain questions to help address their queries, they became more engaged. That's for real. And then when they realize that the chatbot is part of their journey on that topic, which is lead and succeed, they start asking a lot of interesting questions. But likewise, um, they start to ask the chatbot at wee hours of the morning because sometimes they can't sleep. They'll ask questions, but it's of course important to curate the responses that it is fed back to them as well. And most of them felt that it is engaging. They really don't feel like they are talking to a robot. That is one of the big feedback from them. And I really thought that Noodle Factory has done a good job in making it so humane and so humanistic that you don't feel like it's as if you're talking to a friend, but another fellow colleague in maybe of a different role, to a different persona. And this entire thing, and you just saw the demo, you can do it in multilingual,
Mm,
capabilities. That's fantastic. And it's some of them actually tried using Malay as well to see whether they can respond.
yeah, yeah. And that's voice too. So we didn't have the voice on for that, but yeah, multilingual in voice. And in Noodle Factory anyway, it's about 110 languages. So
Oh,
that
fantastic.
covers a really broad cross section of languages. I guess to that point, one of the benefits I see, and I'd love to get your view on this, is for remote teams or hybrid teams, especially where you've got people coming in from other parts of the world using day-to-day different languages, even though we're probably using English for our content.
Hmm.
Um, how do you see that impacting engagement and retention with people who onboard? Do you see that as a benefit, or how is that a benefit?
Definitely it's a benefit because, one of the biggest advantages about AI managed onboarding is you can make it modular, you can make it stackable. You also can tailor flows for different job roles, departments, even different experience and levels in
Mm,
for the new hires, without even building a program from scratch. You just got to think about what how would you want to engage? It's not just a blank. The same level high new hires for different levels. You can do an elevator pitch for different levels, experience levels for the organization. Because I saw that you actually allow them to do a feedback survey so that you um, a, a bit more personalized in terms of the responses as well. Yeah.
got it. So final question, because I see we're quickly running out of time,
Yeah.
but final question, because I read into your answer there that it sounds like you're saying this is very flexible, or it's flexible enough to really be scalable across maybe even different
Different
industry
regions.
types,
Yep.
different regions, different languages. Do you see any limitations there? I mean, maybe ask it in a different way. If you look across the various industries that you've had experience in directly with onboarding and that you have visibility to now in your current role, what is the opportunity there across maybe different industries, or maybe barriers that we should think about in different industries? Do those exist, or is this something that everybody should be taking a look at?
I would think that it is quite uniform across, onboarding is quite uniform across different industries. Most important is you got to, HR teams really need to curate the right journey for the new hires, what you want them to, because basically a new hire that comes into your organization is actually your brand ambassador. Okay, they embrace your brand, they represent the brand of the company. It is important then for your AI onboarding to shape the kind of brand ambassador, employee ambassador or brand ambassador that you want them to be. And seriously, is AI is not replacing the human touch, but AI is actually helping them level up quickly. Because otherwise, if the new hire just come in, it takes normally about 2-3 months for them to get up to speed. But with AI, they can actually get up to speed within 3 weeks and get the route running and get a job done, and still with a lot of coaching from AI to build them to be brand ambassador of the company.
That's excellent. Thank you for sharing that. That's a good note to end on. And I think just summarizing what Amy's talked about, in her experience, this is not about replacing the human, right? This is about augmenting the human, amplifying what happens in that onboarding session that probably is with people, that you still need that. But it's about having HR teams who are creating better, more personalized, more connected experiences, and very importantly, at scale. And
Yes.
I think if we take that one thing away from the conversation today, we hope that that gives you kind of a fresh look on how onboarding can be tackled, because it is a task that needs to be tackled, and really give you the opportunity to focus on the engagement. Amy started off talking about that, about real engagement right from the start, where people do feel connected, hooked in to the culture, and they begin to build that solid connection with the organization, the company, the institution that they are onboarding into. So with that, we'll end today's session. This is actually something that we'll pick up on our next live stream in June. So be on the lookout for that. So in just a few weeks, we're going to pick up on this topic of onboarding. But if you'd like to learn more about how you can get AI to support and assist your onboarding efforts, whatever industry you're in, whatever institution type you're in, or if you just want to share your own experiences too, we'd love to hear that. Maybe feature you on a live stream coming up. We'll look out for your questions and your insights as we continue and we move towards our next session in June. But Amy, thank you so much for joining
Thank
us.
you.
This has been such a
My
pleasure
pleasure.
talking to you. And
Thank
thank you
you.
to everyone for joining us today. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.